welcome back. I'm Emily Johnson, Managing Director of Polaris Capital Advisors, and I am joined by Todd Harlow of Work Plan Retire, Retirement Planning Specialist. We have been discussing the road to retirement, how to create income in retirement, the holy grail of all financial planning. And I think the thing that we really want to drive home is that we feel as financial advisors, as retirement plan specialists, a lot of accountability to you, our clients, to get you from point A to point B. And we know that it takes a lot of discipline to get there. So what we've been trying to drive home throughout this series is that there is a way to generate income throughout retirement to not outlive your funds, but it takes discipline and it takes accountability on our part and on yours. So we talked about the fact that we don't have the crystal ball, but that we have to plan for the unknown. We talked about having a consistent spending strategy, because that really is at the core, making sure that we're disciplined about our spending and have real ideas about how and when and what and why we can spend in the future. We also talked about having that buffer, as Todd says, and I love this one, about having the bubble wrap around our financial plan, which is that cash bucket, the cash reserve bucket. Again, not sexy, but it's something that helps us get to sort of the special sauce. That is what we want to talk about in this last segment. That's the part that everybody wants to talk about. That's the stocks, the bonds, the options, whatever the coolest thing of the day is that you're hearing about on the golf course or from your dentist or from your doubles partner. That's what we're talking about now. And it is perhaps the most important portion, but it comes after having that discipline in spending, discipline in going to meet with your advisor and figure out what the spending is. But this is the most important part, and it's making your investments continue to grow and having the discipline to do it. So why don't we kick off with that?
Sure, yeah, thanks. And you mentioned accountability. I couldn't agree. Vince Lombardi, you know me with sports analogies. Vince Lombardi has a famous quote, "Winning isn't everything, it's the only thing." Well, our accountability, and if accountability is measured by lifetime income, it's not one thing, it's the only thing.
Right.
I mean, you have to deliver on that.
We might not be the best
right.
in that particular year and getting 1% more than the S&P, but we're going to, as you say, win at the long game.
That's right.
That's our goal, is to win at the long game.
And you have to. And that should be really the measure, and is to some degree, of what we do, is successful client outcomes. It's certainly where the corporate retirement business is going, and I know it's in yours, and the measurement therein. Mm-hmm. So, Emily mentioned the secret sauce, the investment part. Well, we've talked earlier about taking real life events into account, inflation, market conditions, and your life.
Yeah, your health, your family's health.
That leads
storms.
us. That's right. That leads us to this our next great big high-tech prop here, which is dividends in retirement, potentially, given those circumstances. Mm-hmm. So I want you to just picture at home, or for the viewers.
This is the hat trick.
Option A and option B. And I'm going to describe these, and we're going to have a big reveal. Option A is an investment, let's be clear, can lose money. However, it pays a fixed rate of interest over the time that you hold it. When it comes to maturity, it gives you your money back plus the interest you collected.
That sounds great. So I get like a little bit of money throughout, and then I get my money back. There's risk though, but okay, I get it. Okay.
Option B also has risk, can go down.
We think we have disclaimers throughout
However,
the show.
option B has unlimited upside in terms of growth. However, also historically, the income it pays over the time you hold it, historically, has gone up.
So if my spending has to go up, then this would be a better option for me, because I can spend more if this is
Quite
going
simply, if I was asking you at home, which would you like to hear more about?
I would like to hear about option B.
What about
please.
your clients?
My clients would all say the exact same thing.
Well,
although that said, they would probably ask first which has more risk, and right now we sort of turn that argument on its head.
That's right. So the big reveal that you can't see at home, the mystery, this is a bond. Fixed rate of interest, loss potential. This is a stock. Now, as you mentioned, turning the argument on its head. Historically, as people come into retirement with their nest egg, they've been taught stocks down or reduce stocks holdings and buy bonds. Why? They're more conservative. But if our ultimate accountability is results, and if we want to buy risk-free investments right now, CDs, things like that, they're paying about 1%.
Right.
And unless you have gobs of money,
1% I think is like a 3-year maybe.
Or plan on spending very, very little money, I think we need to talk about this. So let's try to, as we mentioned, this whole rounding out the process, let's take a look at the power of exploring dividends as an income solution in retirement. Okay?
Yep.
So what we're looking at here is the S&P 500. We can't turn on CNBC or any one of these other shows without hearing it. It's probably on your iPhones and so forth. This is the S&P from 1970 to 2010 for the purposes of this. It proves a point. And it also, we hear this term yield. Yield is what the interest that it pays. But it's important to note, it is typically not understood very, very keenly by even advisors or clients, if you will.
We need a whiteboard.
Yield, that's right. Yield is a measure of price. What people actually want is, what does it pay me?
Right.
And I'm going to explain this. The S&P 500 yield in 1970 was 3.41%. It is down slightly today, but for our argument purposes is roughly the same. So you think, but not so fast. What we actually want is, if I bought a share of the S&P in 1970, what shows up in my bank account, my paycheck? Isn't that really what we want?
What does my statement look
That's
like?
right. And actually, because what you're witnessing here is the dividends per share grow. Remember option B that said you're likely to grow your income over time? That's what dividends do. Bonds and CDs do not grow income.
No.
So what you're seeing here are the dividends, which in 2010 paid 22.73. So a yield, if you really want to know the answer, is 24%. Who doesn't want that?
Right.
So it's important to understand, anyone here in South Carolina, there's quite a few people who've retired from Ohio, if we're honest. Go look at Procter & Gamble's dividend. Go to your internet, take a look at it. And you want to see dividend or income growing, take a look at it.
Yep.
And that's really kind of, you mentioned this secret sauce in our last episode, we talked about the buckets of money. And this was our long-term money. And even though this is our precious nest egg, and we've been in effect brainwashed into thinking we've got to go heavy bonds because I don't have time. And I'm here to tell you, and Emily knows, take a look at your mortgage interest. It's low on a relative basis because interest rates are so low. And we talked earlier, it cuts both ways. Buying risk-free investments or relatively or riskless investments right now just don't pay enough.
It hurts the saver.
Unless you have, it hurts the saver. So,
and it puts you at risk if interest rates go up, that you'd lose money on the principal of your bonds. So this one, we don't like that one as much.
Exactly. Well, they're there for ballast.
That's true.
They're there for the cushion. They're just not putting the money in our paycheck or in our bank accounts that they need. So this really ties it all together and brings it together. And as we said, this whole entire series is about process over product. So we're not long-term per se, biased. We're not paid anymore for dividends.
There are a lot of different ways to accomplish
exactly.
this. Lots of ways to accomplish this.
We are saying that for the clients who need income, and by the way, rising income is usually gets people excited. In order to do that, you have to look here, and I just wanted to show throughout this series we have mentioned this doom and gloom year of 1973. So these four things here we have, let's call this a lime green, hunter green, royal blue, light blue, okay? People don't need to know much about charts, and I know on TV it may not be as clear as possible. Typically something that starts at a fixed point and ends up in the upper left is good, or upper right is good. Something trending down to the lower right is bad. Well, you're going to start with the bad first. These are the 1973, the royal blue, and the year 2000. Everyone remembers the dot-com era was pretty ugly for stocks. These are both investments in what we know as the S&P 500. It's done incredibly well over the years, but look where they ended up in terms of $1 million was actually more like a little below 600,000. They went down. The dividend-paying stocks that are referred to as the dividend aristocrats. Don't want to get too, but these are your Procter and Gamble's.
They throw off cash. Yep, the blue chips. Yep.
And so not only, I just want to make this point, are they typically outstanding for producing growing income in retirement, in two awful investment periods, they ended up with, they grew, but this is the important point, dividend-producing stocks typically have a corporate structure and pardon my buzzword, capital discipline that is more prudent than, dare I say, what they call growth stocks, or to broadly say technology stocks, or let's just put non-dividend paying stocks.
And it also provides a buffer in those down markets. If you're getting that 3%, 4%, whatever the relative measure is, you can hold up.
Exactly. And back to our process matters from the previous segment, we still need to have the cushions because it's not bulletproof, as you can see. It does experience potentially some what we call statement shock. So just in conclusion, dividends matter. We're going to kind of wrap it all together in the next segment, but hopefully we kind of opened your eyes to taking a look at stocks in retirement, perhaps, versus bonds.
And hopefully you go to your statements and take a look at what you're invested in right now and sort of see how it's actually performing relative to this and see if it might work for you. So please stick with us. We'll be right back with pulling this whole thing together on income and retirement. Thanks so much.